Right, post-process, finally. I'm not going to give you a complete rundown of the post-process because we've got a lot of stuff to still get on, but I wanted to just give you at least the 5 kind of main ones that really I systematically do, more or less. So the first one here is always the white balance. So the reason for that is a little bit difficult to illustrate here because the HDRIs that I'm using are quite white and quite even already, so we don't need a massive amount of white balance. I have actually rendered the environment color black here because I really wanted to emphasize the effect of the HDR. So I'll use this one, and actually, you know, I've actually calculated the lighting already, and I'm swapping them around, and it's interesting because they're coming from the same source and they're a bit dark compared to the Peter Guthrie one, which is really nice and bright and gives us this lovely white light and this sort of variation between these sort of slightly pink tones here and then bluer tones. So that's really, really lovely, and there is nothing to do here. However, if we use one of these which is a little bit too blue, then we can of course go to our white balance. So here it's a little bit underexposed, so I would definitely start changing with playing with the auto exposure. So I'll do that now, although now in 419 is changed a little bit, so we need to work with this exposure compensation. But I'm just going to change that a little bit now because I want to come back to that at the end. So what we're going to go through is the ambient occlusion. I really always turn it off. We've already turned it off in the previous video, and then once I'm happy with my lighting, maybe I will turn it back on a little bit. But if I do that, then I'm just going to have a very, very tight radius here and have it very, very low, or maybe that's too tight a radius. Personally, I think you can really spot it a mile away, and if the lighting is well done, we don't really need it. So I'm not really liking what I'm seeing with that, so I'll just turn it off. Screen space reflections. So these are great for having our reflections accurate. So I'll put the detail lighting here. So you know so if I put the intensity back on 100, so that things match perfectly, we'll have this line here. It's hard to see on my so that the things on the floor match from every angle. So that's what we're looking for with our screen space reflections, and that's working very, very well. So these are kind of accurate reflections. The other way we could do that would be to use a planar reflection on the floor, for example. So I'm always kind of looking at these, making sure. So you see there's a slight problem here with the reflections turning off effectively. So we'll try to leave, and here on the edges as well. So I've looked that up. It's a kind of a mysterious ghost reflection due to the way it's generated. So the way I think to get rid of this problem is to basically turn the screen reflections down a little bit, and then we kind of don't see it so much anymore, and maybe don't pay so much attention to it. So that's for the screen space reflections. I very, very often like to do a LUT, which is now in the MISC folder here. Keeps moving around every update. Here, quick one to do LUT. I just take a screen grab that's sort of fairly typical of my scene, and like this, and then take that straight into Photoshop. However, the LUT, it is recommended now to not use it because it's after the tone mapping. The tone mapping happens is here, so I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But they recommend to not use the LUT and go through these. So the way if I do any color correction, I'll kind of play around with the gamma, and sort of I tend to try and change between color, cool and warm. But I'm still guilty to use the LUT. Finally, the vignette. The vignette is in the image effects now, and it's already on by default, but I like to maybe enhance a little bit.